Good morning. This is The Dialogue, and every Saturday we sit here to look at matters of national importance that transpired within the week. Welcome to the program. My name is Tsimapalo, and as usual, the panel sits and we do a discussion. We go into a deep discussion on those matters of national importance. On the panel this morning, Richard Baguma Tinkasimire is a communication expert, and Ronald Mukasa-Senkubuge is a financial literacy expert. We'll be looking at many issues. Several of them transpired within the week. Quite an eventful week. One of those issues this week, of course, it is the price hike of essential commodities. It is still a big concern. The rise in commodity prices, we have talked about it for a while, but again, it still remains a pertinent issue. Government is yet to come out with a concrete plan, an action plan on how to mitigate this issue, and the locals still feel the pinch when we talk about a bar of soap going for 10,000 Ugandan shillings, which was initially at 3,500. It's a very big concern. The price of fuel, the pump price, is still high, and of course you look at other products. We can look at the cooking oil. The product, the price is still really high. The price of fertilizers and many other essential items is still really high. Industrialists this week came out to say and to affirm that indeed the import duty slapped on raw materials is the cause and the real issue behind these price hikes. And again, they also point to the war in Ukraine, the Russian-Ukraine war, of course, has destabilized the flow and the flow of raw materials and goods that are used by locals. Then, we'll be looking at that and we'll be giving it good time. The response from some officials, especially the Right Honorable Prime Minister, also did not rub a section of citizens the right way when she came out to say that if they cannot afford soap, then they can use papao leaves. And she testified that at one point in her life, when there was scarcity of soap, papao leaves were a substitute, and that somehow was looked at as a reckless statement by a section of Ugandans. We'll be looking at some of those issues. But again, we can also look at the commander of the land forces, Lieutenant General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, again this week made his second trip to Kigali, Rwanda, where he met the president of Rwanda, General Paul Kagame, and it was a private visit. But again, his undertaking of serious diplomatic assignments somehow leaves many Ugandans guessing. As we speak, he's already in Egypt meeting the president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and that's another issue that we can give at least a few minutes. But finally, the concerns this week were about the condition, the health condition of the Speaker, Right Honorable Jacob Oulanyah. He was flown to the US at the beginning of February, where he has been since, receiving specialized medical care. And again, This week, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Anita Mongi, the Chief Justice, His Worship Owenyi Dolo Alphonse, and high-profile citizens also traveled to the US to check on the Speaker's health condition, and this triggered speculation and news, especially on social media, coming out to allege that probably things may not have gone well. But from what has come out as an official statement, our Speaker is really recuperating, he's responding well. But again, the concerns all through this week, the public was concerned about the health of the Speaker, Right Honourable Jacob Oulanyah. And I saw a headline in the press, the Minister in charge of ICT, Honourable Chris Baryomunsi, coming out to say that government is now hunting those individuals who have been spreading offensive and false news about the Right Honourable Jacob Oulanyah. Well, we'll also give that issue some few minutes. Welcome. It is The Dialogue. My name is Simapro, and like I said, Richard Baguma Tinkasimire, you are welcome to the program, and it's always a pleasure having you on this show.
Good morning, Apollo. Good morning, our viewers. It's always a pleasure for me to be back here. I am hoping that we are well, and whatever is going on, we are remaining strong and hopeful, because we cannot afford to be hopeless.
Good.
Yeah.
Ronald Mukasa Senkubuge, please speak to our viewers. You are most welcome to The Dialogue.
Thank you so much, Apollo. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. I want to thank those who are joining us on this program, who in your homes, in your workplaces. It's always an honor to come to the studios, and thanks a lot for the invitation. And I'm hoping that we will have a discussion which will enrich those who are watching, and also us who are here in the studios.
Good. Well, Richard, talk about the public concern and the speculation triggered by the visit by the Deputy Speaker, the Chief Justice. We are talking about three arms of government. One, the legislature, and the top man is hospitalized in the US. Then the second in command flies out to the US. Then another arm of government, the judiciary, the head of the judiciary also travels to the US. That triggers speculation that probably things may not have gone well. And the spread of that false information, you are a communication specialist. What do you make of such?
First of all, I think one has to really have a lot of sympathies for jail, for the Right Honourable Speaker. When I was in university, the Speaker of Uganda was the Speaker of the university.
Really?
And in between, he did many things, studied this course, then switched courses to go study law. So at some point, when we had interaction, I told him, I think your lifetime dream is to be Speaker of Uganda. That's when he was still Deputy Speaker. And I said, oh, why not? If, you know, he used to use a lot of Bible verses and you know, God. I said, yeah, if God wills it, why not? You go for it. So to get into it, for me to get into it, and he has not really had opportunity to steer it, to sit on it, is for me sad. But also one has to feel sympathetic, because you see, ill health, any one of us is a candidate for ill health. So on that fact, now the communication bit. So if the country does not talk about its speaker, the third person, the third most powerful protocol-wise, but the head of the judiciary. If social media does not talk about the speaker, So which other person would people expect to be talked about? I mean, really. Yeah. So from a communication
So
point,
it was justifiable
so from a
for the
communication
public
point,
to be concerned.
no,
and,
you see, if you took, I think he last steered the house in November, maybe somewhere
last year.
But if you took even the time he was not steering the house, JO was still headline. So JO has been a headline. It's not just now. So first of all, that I think we need to agree, to realize and say, okay, this speaker of ours, because of his personality, I mean, just him dancing in Omoro, with people like that, it goes viral. So how would we expect surely that both the traditional and mainstream media and the social media would not pay attention to the person of a profile like that of Jacob Oulanyah? Of course, that would be really pretending about objective conditions on the ground. The second thing is, for me, I was asking myself actually, how come people hadn't gone to see him?
Really?
Yeah, who was wondering, because you see, for me, visiting a sick person who is close to me is an obvious thing. I mean, I don't know. So I was like, for some of these brother, sister,
Since February 5th.
how did it take
5th February.
why did it take this long that he hasn't yet been visited? So maybe for me, that would have been perhaps the angle of my story, that they have taken so long without going. So he must be also wondering, how come these people are not coming to see me?
Okay.
So for people to go to see him, when they have even delayed to go, I mean.
So
for
we
me-
would have seen probably the vice president or any other
No,
high government.
You see, the chief
official.
the chief justice. But how come we don't talk about Mao, for example?
Yeah, no, but Mao is part of this
Mao went.
entourage.
Yes, absolutely. You see, so for me, the chief justice is the same as Mao to Oulanyah.
Okay.
It's not about positions. No, it's about friendship.
Okay.
Yeah. The Minister of Health went too, by
Yeah.
the way. So if we talk about the representation of arms of government, but I don't think that the selection of the choosing of the delegation was about the representation of arms of government. It was about personal relationship.
But then if it's about personal relationships, then it negates the fact that actually you said that a person of that profile, we would have seen people going to visit him.
Yes, that's what I'm
If
asking.
it becomes personal.
How come we haven't seen? Why not? That I am in hospital, me. I spend a month plus. That you, Apollo,
I
and
haven't.
the other one who hosts me usually because you're my friends, and the other ones, none of you has checked on me.
Yeah.
I would also be feeling isolated and lonely, really. And I would be wondering, are these guys my friends? Yeah. So that's one. Two, you don't get hospitalized when you are not sick.
Yeah, true.
No one lives in a hospital like a hotel. No. In fact, no one becomes an inpatient unless they are really sick.
Yeah.
So, for the speaker and any other person who gets admitted into hospital, the health team has assessed and says this one cannot be looked after at home. And that's also another obvious thing. So to say the speaker is ill, yes, of course. How does anyone get admitted when they are not ill? That for me is another thing. But finally, that a delegation goes like this, of course, raises attention, brings attention to this matter, and of course brings attention of the matter from the media, from the social media, but also from the general public, obviously. So we cannot, I mean, for me, is they should have gone earlier. These studies should have started
long
earlier.
overdue.
It's long overdue. Now that they have gone, obviously they must know that it will bring. But you see, also we were discussing one or two of the things. You see, a region, for example, like Acholi, and these are the discussions that will come. You have your tax, young tax. One of them goes, the DIGEP,
Yeah.
the other day. Now this one, is threatening, of course the levels of concern go higher.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Obviously, yes.
The passing of Lokech.
Yes. I mean, for the region, for the people around there, like, but these are the ones who are holding on to, taking our mantle. Now, how come?
I remember when the Right Honorable Rabea Kadaga was hospitalized. He had, he was in a similar condition. And the people of Kamuli and Busoga as a sub-region, they were all saying, she is our only candle that is burning.
Yes.
We can't, even when she was dropped from the speakership to the minister in charge of East African Community Affairs, the whole region felt discontent. And
so yeah, so we need to expect this. Now, what is important for me is how the government machinery responds. Yes, how the government machinery responds, because it must take leadership. The government information machinery must take leadership. You see, in such cases, my expectation would be that we would be having either a family member, better by the way, a family member, more reliable, more family, more home, more personal, sharing with the media. There are very many friendly media who would carry the story in a more balanced way about the developments on this health. What has been happening is that there has been fumbling around this, but templates for the health of a senior official in business or in government are there, they exist. Why the fumbling? For me, I can't understand this fumbling nature. The minister is, oh, we are going to arrest you, blah, 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 we are coming for you. No, why are you asking the director, or I don't know, parliament? Why? This would be expected, this would be predicted, the templates exist, the messaging is empathy, and then explanation. Why don't we do it? That's for me what is really disappointing.
The public, the public needs constant.
It needs regular.
Absolutely. Constant. There should be constant messages.
Oh yes.
I mean, in regard to the honorable
regular
speakers.
messaging, and it's standard
health condition,
and the words are the same. I just can't understand.
Which has not been the case.
Yes, the fumbling in the management of information by government for me is amazing, often amazing.
Well, me and you know that when that happens, then you open room for rumor and speculation. Absolutely. And that is actually what is happening. Ronald, how do you look at this whole issue, how it has been handled?
Yeah, I think it was interesting listening to Mr. Waguma, communication expert. For those of us who are not, you have explained some of the problems which we have seen with this whole arrangement. But I guess for me, the starting point would largely be the fact that I can only imagine what the Honorable Speaker's family is going through. Having someone who is ill for 1 week is a problem. 2 weeks is a problem. An extended period is such a problem. And most of us go through that experience without the public scrutiny. So I sympathize with them in that regard, that you have to go through this complex period with the public. And I think I've seen a bit of information on social media and others, people coming out and saying, you know what, I think this is a time of prayer, which I think it is, because if any of us was in such a situation, you hope that the only thing people are doing for you is praying Sending for prayers. You and hoping the best for you. So I guess for me that is one of the messages which comes out strongly, the need to kind of come together. But I guess one of the things which, and I'll speak to this through the eyes of from a financial literacy perspective. One of the most challenging times in any family's life is an illness of a family member. And this doesn't matter whether your family is wealthy or it is not. The illness of a family member is such a challenging period. It is challenging emotionally, it's challenging socially, but it's also very challenging economically. And I guess for me, as I saw what the period which we are going through, from a national perspective, that's the question we need to ask. That how do we institutionalize this care which we have during times of illness? Because I think the country should go to all lengths to ensure that our Honorable Speaker gets the best health care. But I guess that also tells us that we should make sure that that is something which cuts across to all Ugandans.
Yeah.
Because a family, an urban, even seemingly wealthy family, you say we have gone to India, we are trying to kind of find health care, and it's very expensive. It's very expensive, and from you can't even save towards it. You can't even. I mean, the challenge in this nation is if you appear and you are 70 and you say you want to get insurance, there is no insurance firm which is going to insure a 70-year-old, and those are fundamental national questions. You can't get that medical insurance. There could be a few, but I think they are very, very small.
The risk is bigger.
Yes. So those are the questions which, for me, come out. That how do we make sure that bit is institutionalized? And we see so many, but even a family in the rural area, just one illness, the cow is sold, the chicken is sold, everything is sold to make sure that we deal with that. So I think from the perspective of healthcare, there are questions which we need to ask ourselves as a nation and say, how do we make sure this is institutionalized? And they are very tough questions. And I think the current parliament and the current leadership, that's a question we need to ask. Because this is the Honorable Speaker. It could happen to an MP. It could happen to an officer. It could happen to a commissioner. It could happen to any ordinary citizen. So that, for me, is one of the questions. Because in times like this is when, you know, especially when you have to be under medication for an extended period, it becomes very, very difficult. And I feel like the conversations on a national health care service how we can be able to fund that, I feel like those conversations, we can use this opportunity to amplify
the National Health Insurance Scheme.
Exactly. Because we need to use this opportunity to amplify them because it is a pain point. I think, as Mr. Bagoma mentioned, if a close friend is ill, I'll do whatever is possible. And I think he asks good questions. If you don't see your close friend passing by, it's a big shock.
But Maguma should know that this case is somehow unique. Not everyone can travel to the US.
Yes. But
exactly. The speaker's friends cannot be categorized as everyone.
Exactly.
They are not everyone.
Okay.
No, exactly my point.
They are higher than everyone.
And I think this has played out in the national. Every move is watched. And that is the burden of being a public figure. That's the burden. But I think for me, what is key is that we need to ask ourselves, how do we repackage, so that we ask ourselves, how do we extend better healthcare, so that access, because what is clear is that there are things we can't deal with as a nation. And we believe that there are people who can deal with it. If sometimes even our own Ugandan doctors can deal, but those are big questions which we need to put in the table. And for me, I feel that's one of the conversations, at least as a justification, that we use this as an opportunity to institutionalize. But also, I think it's also equally important to know that at times like this, we ask ourselves what binds us as Ugandans. Like, there is a sense of how do we treat people who are ill? How do we treat people who are in a sad situation? And I think quite across the country, it's all the same. And I think that those are, in my opinion, national values which we need to make sure that cut through to define us, because everyone gets it. As in, wherever you will go, whichever part of the country the speaker would have come from, people are concerned when you are in this situation. So my feeling is that we need to ask ourselves, how do we bring back that voice of things we commonly agree with?
I think, Ronald, that is when I need to hear from Richard. You think it should be time for empathy, to show empathy and oneness in this tough time. But we are talking about news that actually, I mean, ringing. I mean, the bad news, the only bad news coming in all over social media and everywhere, predicting the worst, actually asserting that the worst has happened. But it has not happened only to Right Honorable Jacob Oulanyah. Even the Fountain of Honor, President Museveni has been pronounced dead, declared over social media. The President of the National Unity Platform, Robert Kyagulanyi, and many other high-profile Ugandans have been.
His Majesty
Yes,
was declared.
yes, His Majesty, the Kabaka of Buganda. So, Baguma, Ronald talks about that value. Why would one, what motivates this hate speech? What is it, do you think?
You see, I'm not sure what, but I think there are many factors. Think about this. My brother, who was accompanying Robert Kyagulanyi to Karangara, because he's convinced about Robert Kyagulanyi, gets arrested, beaten, in prison, up to today, not tried. I associate jail to the system that is, in my mind, evil.
Jacob Oulanyah?
Yeah. I mean, I'm giving you a scenario. Here it is me. I live in Makindye. My brother is really convinced about Kyagulanyi. Accompanies him to Karangara. You get him. You brutalize him. He's incarcerated without trial up to now.
Really?
No, I'm not saying it is me.
It's a scenario.
I'm giving you a scenario. We know that there are people who were, for example, arrested, accompanying Kyagulanyi when he was going to Karangara during the campaign, who are still in prison now. So I associate this JO with that system.
Okay.
And he's sick and you want me to be sympathetic?
Okay.
Really? It is not human. I mean, that's not how human beings work. No.
So you're talking about a section of Ugandans.
Yeah, let me give you another one. I'm in Bunyoro, living there. Then somebody says we have discovered something under your ground. It is called oil. Then we come with a few of us with some machines called guns, whatever. We push all of you. You are displaced. Somebody gives you private land. Today you are in this home of yours with your gardens. Tomorrow you have been displaced. I say we are going to compensate you. I associate the speaker, whoever it is, that speaker there, with this group that has destroyed my home, my livelihood, has made me go there as internally displaced. My children are starving. And you want him to be sick, and I feel happy. And I start sympathizing. So you see, there are some people, a section, which is aggrieved by whatever actions of government. Whatever. Many of them young, educated, on social media, and really hostile. So if you are associated with that, then whatever pain comes to you, okay, now we go.
They will jubilate.
Yeah. Now, for us to want to close our eyes
to that reality,
is night dancing. Yes, because we are dancing in the darkness, but we know that. So that's one. Two, I don't think as a country we have been having conversations about values. I don't think so. In fact, the conversations that we have are about things that tell us that we don't have values. We have, for example, a major conversation about the breakdown of the health system, the serious breakdown of the health system. And he alluded to it. He says, this is now opportunity to talk about rebuilding our national health system. I mean, really, this is what we do. When you remember when the former speaker got an accident on the highway? I think the man was called the late Ayume.
Yeah, Francis.
Then we went about doing, traffic enforcement.
He actually died in that accident.
Traffic enforcement. Blah, 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 blah. When somebody is thrown out, then we discuss. But there are those ones who will genuinely have been impacted grossly and negatively by the breakdown of the healthcare system. And in their minds, this person was in position to influence things. So I lost my baby because they wanted 10,000, because there was no pamba. And so then I should be sympathetic. That group is also there. And you see, for me, with all the sympathy and all the pain, for us to close our eyes to this pain, and therefore the witch-mindedness that people will express is to bury our heads, the proverbial burying our heads in the sand when we are being attacked by a hyena. So I think we must confront this. But also, the bigger question is, how do we generate a conversation around values? How do we even start trying to build a consensus about national values? We don't even have a consensus on this one. How do we move ourselves? How do we dialogue and move ourselves from being this broken down, morally broken down community to rebuilding that? And I think those are very difficult and
Richard, there has been, over the years, there have been efforts to popularize the ideology of Pan-Africanism. At least there have been deliberate efforts. You are aware, even this time it is now being taken to schools, through the school system, trying to make citizens at a younger age understand the importance of loving your nation and instilling that concept of Pan-Africanism in Ugandans. Don't you think that's one area how that value system can be built and propagated?
You see, patriotism can be taught as a subject. In my view, that is reductionist. That is reducing patriotism to equivalent of geography.
Okay.
Yes.
You don't believe in teaching patriotism?
No, it is one way. It is one way of trying to propagate. But if you reduce it to a subject, in my view, that is very reductionist. Patriotism is like many things. When you have a child, and all these groups of ours say, when you steal and you have a child at the back, that is the best education.
Yeah, you are teaching them.
You are giving the child. So, when you see, when I resisted going for cadre training. And when we went, I went with Charles Rumshana to meet the president when we were in the guild, and he said, why don't you go for cadre training? And we laughed. We said, maybe those trainers, we also need to train them a bit. And they brought the course to Makerere. And I said, you see, and they are very senior gentlemen now in government. But at that time, when I came to see the instructors, the three I met, they are now senior people in government. They were in the morning, early in the morning, they were all smelling booze. They had been drinking in the night. I said, these drunkards cannot go to instruct me here. No, I refuse. That is excellent. So what I'm saying is that, you see, patriotism can best be instructed by the people who are talking about it, practicing it, being seen. And it comes from being pan-Ugandan.
Yeah.
Pan-Africanism can come from being pan-Ugandan. You cannot be non-pan-Ugandan and then you say, I am promoting Pan-African. You have lost your center of gravity. And therefore you have no springboard. So we also have to examine our approach to making people be pan-Ugandan, patriotic, and therefore promoting Pan-Africanism. Just look at the patriotism office, National Patriotism Office. Go and check how much money do they get just for fuel to go around? Just for fuel. I think it's laughable.
Little or
I think it's laughable. Little is a good statement. So how do you say you are promoting that?
Teaching Pan-Africanism is a mockery.
At least the way it is being handled, the resources it is being allocated, the priority is being given.
But is patriotism somehow connected to what you were talking about, the morals?
Absolutely, there's no question. There's no question. These are
the values.
The values, yes. They are interconnected. Absolutely. Yeah, so what are our values? What do we value?
Well, Ronald, Richard seems to say that all that we see, these messages, the fake news about death of high-profile Ugandans that spread very fast is as a result of disgruntlement and division in our society, having some people who they think are privileged and do not actually care about the majority that actually in pain. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think one thing which social media has the capacity to do, which we possibly didn't have, and this is the entire world, which we did have 30, 40 years ago, is I will know what Mr. Waguba is thinking in the morning by looking at his Twitter, and the message comes out. So I think social media has the capacity to pick up messages, at least from that specific group, which at least has access, because the majority still don't have access. But the point is that it has that capacity to bring it out. And I think when it is a reflection of what people are thinking and the perspectives which people have. And I think what is important is to notice that we are all part of the creation process of this Uganda and this Africa, which we are part of. Those of us who are here today, we have decisions to make to kind of mold a better country, to mold. And that decision is based on the experiences we have had. It is based on just looking across and noticing that there is a fellow human being who is going through a difficult time. I think that we have to ask ourselves, can we use these same platforms to start that conversation actively? Because certainly expressing the pain is one of the things, that there is this pain. But we need to push it a bit further and say, how do we translate this pain into actionable things? I'll give you an example. I have spent the better part of my career working with small and medium businesses. We have just gone through 2 years of a very difficult 2 years. These COVID years have been difficult, but they've been difficult on one specific industry, and that's the education industry, especially the private education industry. So the schools have been locked for 2 years. We have people who have kept paying salaries and sending food to their teachers for the last 2 years. Have you ever had them mentioned as patriotic?
No.
Because they are owners of schools, business people who have done this, and it has we haven't even viewed what they did as a way of keeping keeping us going. Because you talk to them as individuals, and they will tell you that no, you get a batch of matoke you send to your teacher. I have a friend of mine who he had rental properties, but the teachers have been staying there for the last 2 years without, he had to move them to find them where to stay.
Those are the gestures that define patriotism.
Yes,
that's what you're saying.
My point is that it isn't true that there are no things happening even now, and in pockets they are happening. And we need to say, how do we elevate them and institutionalize them? Because as Mr. Baguma rightly mentioned, patriotism is not just a class. It is what is manifested. There are things which people will say that has been what? That has been patriotic. And when you look at the entire last 2 years, communities have worked hard to keep a semblance of stability, even up to now, for sure. But we need to ask ourselves, have we defined that as, can we pull some lessons from that, some values from that, and say that this is what we believe in as a nation? And I think that the more we pull out those lessons, we'll start noticing that we are part of the creation process, that there are things we have added to what has already been constructed that can be able to create. However, I feel that many times the voice which comes out clearly is not just the voice of identifying the problem, but the voice of, can we be able to solve this problem? And sometimes when we get to that point, it kind of pushes back these messages of what can practically be done. So I think every event, every crisis we go through, I'll give you an example. During the lockdown, there were a couple of people who were sent releases for food and things
cash
like
relief.
Cash relief. And that was at that point.
Yeah.
There was chaos in there, and was it the
But
right
it was
person?
a patriotic gesture.
Yes. But the point is that you saw someone in need, and you said, "Let's send something in there." Now the question is that, do such people still exist? And have we put a mechanism which says that if there is a widow in a parish who is going through a hard time and is lacking food, there is a mechanism we have created as a nation to say, at least every month you will get 20,000 shillings. If that happens, then that means that we have institutionalized. And for this widow, when you talk about patriotism, that's what it means. That fellow Ugandans who are more privileged, who can pay taxes, they looked at me in this condition and they helped me out. That for some Ugandans will say, what can 20,000? But there are people who need it.
Okay.
So the issue is, how do we make sure that we pull these emotions out and we institutionalize them?
But Baguma, we have to wind up on this particular topic, but he raises under a very pertinent issue about social protection, that system of social protection. But again, we can couple it with what you raised again about what lessons maybe we can draw from such unfortunate events, and that we start a conversation on building a robust healthcare system in this country. We can revive debate on the national health insurance scheme. I remember when the Right Honorable Jacob Bolanya was flown out to Seattle, where he still is, and we were told that, is it 1.7 billion shillings to charter the Uganda Airlines to take him straight. You remember the discussion that came up around that time, how this money should have been maybe used here. But again, the discussion somehow was, I don't want to say it was vulgarized, but I think maybe it should have been carried on. What do you think, Richard, at this point?
The discussion, for me, the discussion that was juxtaposed with this flying and the cost was the removal of the executive director of Mulago.
Oh, Mulago Hospital.
You see, it happened about the same time, and the discussion was going on. And I was wondering, do people see parallels in these stories? And it would be interesting to see where it ends. What finally court will conclude, and what the Auditor General now. You know, one of the things that
are they interconnected?
I mean, at least or about health, they are interconnected. Absolutely. You see, if you say, and this is an allegation, that there was an embezzlement of how many billions?
38.
Something billion.
Yeah.
Whatever it is they are investigating. I hear now. I now have
28, I think.
I think I've had now Parliament jump in,
0.8.
and I think I jump in. It's the usual process. Parliament, CID, health monitoring, IGG. So you have 5 bodies investigating. You think we will have a conclusion to that? So we'll have these. But you see, even in the best of health systems, people sometimes get taken to other health systems for certain ailments. That's one. Two, I think it is also futile for us to imagine that at this point we can have the same health standards as Germany or Norway or the US. No, I mean, that is also futile. We will be expecting too much. But I think it's not too much for us to expect that if we guarantee 1.4 trillion shillings as a country, as a nation, we should have a hospital standing. Because we have done that.
Yeah.
As a country, we have guaranteed 1.4 trillion for a modern hospital.
As we did for the Lubowa Specialized?
We did that. I'm saying we did that. So me and you and him, we are paying a price for a hospital that is non-existent. So at least we are right to be angry.
Really?
At least we have that right to be angry. That what we have guaranteed and there is a cost to us does not exist. Surely. So yes, some of us will obviously have to go out of this country for treatment. We are not yet there, and I tell you, we have a long way to go to get there. But we are also, I think, we have a right to say, for the much that we have invested, we must have better. We ought to have better.
We ought to.
So so that anger must also be allowed to manifest itself. Yes, and so for me that's the difficult balance. And so away from the Right Honourable Speaker, who is just one case. By the way, if you look at the records of this country and how much families spend to take their loved ones out for some of the treatments that we'll be doing here. But I can also tell you an example, 2 examples related to my family. One was recommended to go to India. The specialist was a Ugandan doctor.
Really? Working in India.
Was actually based here, but he goes to India. He's invited to India, these things where you come for 2 weeks or something. Sees these specialized, he's part of that specialized team, because they bring in somebody from Turkey, somebody from, and then they see these cases. The other one was in South Africa. Here, the doctor is here in our cancer institute. This guy was flown to South Africa. This is the specialist they brought from here. They are ours. Now, what happens therefore is if we guarantee 1.4 trillion, is to have the infrastructure and the facilities, so that these people, and also the pay, so that instead of these people flying to South Africa for the pay and the infrastructure, they are here. Which also means that we can actually pay for it, some of us. It means we can pay for it. Without, minus the tickets, by the way, things would be done here. So you see, Apollo, now, if you come and tell me that I saw you guarantee 1.4 trillion the other day on my behalf, and I have a cost to me and my children, and you tell me there was rain, and therefore progress couldn't go on. But on the side, there is a building coming out, and even on the other side, there's another structure coming out. And then you say, I'm supposed to be too patriotic. You are the one who guaranteed and took this one, and you're telling me to be patriotic. So what is your behavior and your words? I don't know if you see.
Ronald, let's conclude on this matter. Do you think this whole discussion will somehow move the authorities and the authority to look at these issues we are discussing and probably consider them as pertinent?
I absolutely hope so, because I think for me the demography of this country is the greatest example. If you tell us that half of the country are below 17 years old, it's a very powerful statement to the rest of us who have crossed 40, for example. It means that whichever decision we are making, we are making it for people who will be alive within the next 30 years, 40 years. And I believe that these emotions which are coming out and this agitation which is coming out is really an opportunity for us to have a national conversation. And a conversation which says which kind of Uganda do we want to build in the next 30 years. Because for some of us, we don't know whether we'll be part of it. But for a 10-year-old, certainly they will be right there. So I guess that for me, we have to convert these energies into clear policies. We have to convert these energies into clear ideas that we start saying never again. Never again will this happen in this scenario. A good example would be a mother dying in childbirth. There is no reason why a mother should die in what? There are few exceptional cases. But the ones we can solve, as Mr. Baguma has said, those we need to what? We need to make sure that we are solving. So for me, I think that that is the most important thing to do. And I guess that the leaders, our leaders today, that is the realization which they need to have, that the people who they are actually dealing with are not their contemporaries. The people they are dealing with have another 50 years ahead of them. And they are saying that I should possibly be able to, if I was going out of the country for medical care, it would be different if I'm going out of the country to Tanzania or going out of the country, because it's actually cheaper. If you get into your car with your patient, you drive him to Mwanza, and that's where the best hospital is. And I think it's not a conversation for just Uganda, but all of us. You're saying that, okay, yes, there is a good hospital in Ahmedabad. That is true. But why isn't that good hospital in Khartoum? And if it is there, can we be able to create a mechanism where I can be able to connect with Khartoum? So that, for me, is the key conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ronald, and thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much, our viewers. We'll be going for a short break, but to dispel all the rumor, the Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable Anita Mong, sent a message, I mean, the latest from in regard to the Speaker's health. And she writes, together with close friends, His Lordship Alfonso Wenyidolo, Honorable Norbert Mao, and Health Minister Jennifer Cheng, I have visited Right Honorable Jacob Olanya at his hospital bed in Seattle. He is receiving and responding to treatment under the close attention of his doctors. Let's keep him in prayers for a speedy and complete recovery. I urge the public to respect his privacy. I think that is important. Respect his privacy and that of the family. That's the latest, and we here, all of us, put our speaker in prayers, and we pray for his quick recovery. We're going for a break. When we return, more other issues. Don't go away. It is The Dialogue. Welcome from the break. The program is The Dialogue. My name is Simapolo. I have Richard Tinkasimire Baguma, and Baguma is a communication expert. We have Ronald Mukasa Senkubuge, and Senkubuge is a financial literacy consultant and expert. We're looking at matters of national importance. And let's move on and look at the General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. He is the commander of the UPDF land forces, and he is also a special advisor to the president on special operations. General Muhoozi Kainerugaba has of late been assigned to sensitive assignments and undertakings, and it was at the end of last month when he flew to Kigali, Rwanda, in that trip that culminated into the opening of borders that had been closed for almost 3 years. And this week again, Muhoozi Kainerugaba traveled to Rwanda on a private visit, again from the messages he's posted on Twitter. This was also a follow-up on other issues relating to the relations between the two countries, Uganda and Rwanda, which look to be now becoming better and better. I'm talking about bilateral relations, which have been on the rocks for some time. Well, like I said in my introductory statements, looks like the diplomatic assignments undertaken by the general keep a section of Ugandans guessing. I must say that he is currently in the country, in Egypt. He's in Egypt meeting President Al-Sisi, but this was on the invitation of the President of Egypt himself. Richard Baguma, let's hear from you. Why would these assignments, throw the citizenry into guessing? And it has been in public discourse for some time.
Actually, for me, again, from an information communication perspective, I would be shocked if it was not in public discourse. Yeah, I would be very shocked that the son of the president, the first son, who is also a very senior military official, who is probably the only senior or junior military officer or military officer at all, who is also a special presidential advisor, who is a Twitter general of recent, and tweeted that he was quitting the army. Can you imagine another general tweeting that he's quitting the army?
I can't imagine it.
Yeah, you can imagine what would do. Yeah. That he's in the public discourse. Of course. Of course. Of course. He has such a profile that he will be in the public discourse. Obviously. Whether he was seen walking in Nakasero Market, whether he was seen visiting Mubs University, whether he is seen milking cows in Chisozi, he will be in the public discourse. So first of all, that he can't escape the public discourse. So that's one. In fact, I think General Gov't has been in the public discourse even when he was a student. Yeah, there would be a story around him. And if you remember, there was even a story when he became uniformed, whether he was an LDU, whether he was a soldier. And that's how many years ago. That was close to 30 years, I think.
Yeah, 1999, I think that's when he joined.
Close to 30 years ago, something like that. So, yes, when you're in that position, you are a son or daughter of a president, you are a senior military officer, any senior military officer, the commander of land forces in this country, whoever it is, will be in the public eye. And you are a special presidential advisor, perhaps the only active military officer who is a special presidential advisor. These things put you squarely in public discourse. So that will not go away.
I may also remind you that there are many Ugandans out there who you would approach and ask who the CDF is, and they may not know who the CDF is currently. Anyway.
Yeah. But you raise a very philosophical question. Who actually is the CDF in real terms? Well, don't take me there. but philosophically and in actual operational ways, who is the CDF? But anyway, that's another question. The profile of this gentleman called General Muhoozi Kainerugaba certainly is a profile that attracts attention and imagination. And then this is somebody who has been in the news consistently, and even some generals claim they have been in trouble because of speaking about.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. In fact, one of the senior generals even coined the term Muhoozi Project. The Muhoozi Project. So this discourse has been going on and on. And so when a special presidential advisor like that one, and the first son, is given tasks that for our everyday perception seem to be outside his public profile or what the public think he should be doing, then certainly the public discourse goes higher. So you see that, obviously. But also I think he has been having an interesting machinery, particularly that went onto social media. If you look at in my view, it has been a very strategic and creative social media team that has been positioning him in certain light. Increasing.
Well, they can position him in any way. But again, being sent on these sensitive diplomatic assignments.
Yeah, but you see,
also is another.
Yeah, but I'm also showing you that this is not. These two are not independent in my view. No, they are not separate, unconnected streams. No, they are streams which are flowing, in my view, to a certain river.
They are all connected somehow.
In my view, these are connected. These are connected streams, and they have been flowing. They have been flowing for many years, and here we are. Now, what you need to be thinking about is a person like, for example, General George. Yeah. So General George Odong, you are the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So where are you in this? So you need to think about such a gentleman. But generally in the diplomatic, in governance, many times the children of reigning leaders will undertake very sensitive missions. They have a certain value, guarantor value, that will be attached. In fact, if you remember, General Muhoozi wrote that General Kagame is my uncle.
Yeah.
If you remember, there has been even like Christmas where General Kagame's entire family has spent it at the General Muhoozi's father's
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the while it might look out of the ordinary, some of the challenges they may be dealing with are actually out of the ordinary. And for these parties to feel that what is being put on the table is also extraordinary, you mean it extraordinary, you sometimes need to deploy your own, as to provide some guaranteeing element. That's one. The second one, for me, I think that General Muhoozi is a person who has been deliberately positioned to be a player, an important, very high level player in this country going forward.
Really?
Yes, I think this has been cultivated very carefully, very deliberately,
are you saying,
and very strategically.
Are you saying the Muhoozi project is taking shape?
You see, let me give you an example. And this example, I've given it.
The so-called.
I've given it. I don't know about the Muhoozi project, but I have given this example that to our west, the son of a president became a president. To the country bordering us on the west. And by the way, that son who became a president was being dismissed, living here in this city as a DJ.
Laurent Kabila.
To our east, the president is the son of a president.
Uhuru Kenyatta.
I lived in that country when that son was being dismissed as a drunkard and a club goer. Why do we have examples so close and we still refuse to open our eyes? Why? So, that is one of the things. But two, me Baguma, my son KJ, when I am in a position I will try to position him to be a player of influence in my sphere of influence, if I can. I think the great-grandfathers of His Majesty Mutebi did, and I think His Majesty Mutebi is doing it for Semakoki.
But that is the monarchy you are referring to.
Yeah, I'm telling you that, you see, for the monarchy to happen is because the great-grandfathers of the current monarch slaughtered and subdued and subjugated all the others around them, and they became the monarchs. They were not elected. If we pretend that that's not true, who elected them?
Okay, as we move on in just a minute.
So if for example, Mayor Lukwago has a Lukwago Jr., whom he's positioning to be the chairperson of the Kampala Youth
Council, it's fine. Well, one comment on his tweets alleging that he was quitting, then retracted that maybe he has to wait for 8 years, quitting the army. Do you find them connected with what you seem to think is the big
what I can what I can say,
big project?
what I can tell you that I think, and this time we'll bear it out. I think we will increasingly so a general Muhoozi Kainerugaba in suits and civilian clothes. We will increasingly see a general Muhoozi.
Yeah. Okay, Ronald, I don't know if you can make a comment.
I know what I can add, but I guess for me, it is where you started on the border reopening, and I think one of the things which is important to look at is how do we make economics the first thing in our politics, because it seems to be at the heart of the pain of the nation today. And for me, I feel like that's one of the things from the whole conversation, and I can't speak authoritatively on General Muhoozi, but that message you said about the opening of the border, it had been closed for a bit of a while, and
3 years.
3 years.
It's not a bit of a while.
It's a big period of time.
Yes.
And you think about a place like Kigezi, the areas of Kigezi, the areas of Kisoro. The issue is that I think we need to. I saw an image today when I was coming of the Prime Minister of the UK in Saudi Arabia to negotiate.
Yeah, Boris Johnson.
And what fascinated me most was the reason for the visit. Oil prices are climbing, so the reason for the visit is how do we negotiate a deal. And me, I think that has to come close to all our engagements with our neighbors, because currently the economic question is a big one. The border being closed is such a big problem. I mean, the politics of it, for sure. But there is the economics of it. The businesses which we are trading in maize, which we are crossing. And I think that going forward, the political leaders need to make sure that the economics comes close.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I mean, if when there is a visit in Egypt, we want to see the economics of that visit also. Like what exactly are we slotting in for the economics of the visit? And I think that is not just in this case, but all cases, be it ambassadors, so that our business community can be able to see that expansion, which absolutely needs to happen to solve the problems which we have. And for me, the fact that for 3 years the border was closed and we kept moving on, the maize mills which collapsed, and they go under the cracks. But for me, I believe those are the foundations that are building this economy that we have. And we need to ask ourselves, how do we defend them with our politics? So one of the things which I hope we see more is that anytime we engage internationally, it would be very nice to see the economics of that engagement, not just the politics.
I see, Ronald. You seem you seem to credit, I mean, to value more of that that border reopening, and not, it shouldn't be about who negotiated.
You see, from
the deal, but the fact is, the borders were opened, and now trade relations can actually get better.
And why it is important is because governments can change. It can, but there are things there. When you look at what is actually going to integrate us as Africa, it is the fact that I produced watermelons and they were sold in Kigali. Those watermelons sold in Kigali at an extra 2,000 will make me take my children to what? To school. And we need to ask ourselves, so it is, the politics should be facilitating that, not the other way around. And I think why it is important is when you see the way the story has been narrated, we, and a number of others, we don't pull out the economic benefit or the economic progress that has been made, because we need to make sure that that becomes the story, so that we can say that these are the connections that need to be made to be able to get the trade going. And if we only paint the political story, the real challenge which we have is that many times, even and I'll give examples. I'll give an example of, you remember the milk thing we had with Kenya. The milk thing we had with Kenya is still a political question. It is a political question. But all these political engagements, I think we need to convert them into economic, especially with the countries which are neighboring us. Yeah. And many times it is difficult to keep the narrative clear because of the politics, as Mr. Baguma has mentioned. But we need to make sure that the economics is coming up.
I get it. But finally, Baguma, he raises another very, very pertinent issue of looking at all matters and issues with political lenses. And true, when the borders were opened and all the narrative focused on the facilitator and not the economic dividends that come out of that reopening of the borders. Just 1 minute, and we go.
Yeah, but you see, Bwana Senkubuge raises an issue that is usually above our average minds. Economizing the visit of the first son to his uncle, who is the president of another country. Our minds are not captured by the economics of that. It's a little above our heads. So that's why, that's part of the problem. But in the first instance, the economics went problematic. The cracks happened. People fell through. Many people, by the way, fell through the cracks. If you get individual stories, you can understand how painful this was. But all that because of the politics. Yeah. So when the politics goes stupid,
and everyone,
when the politics goes wrong, the economics suffers so much. But oftentimes, when the economics is going right, it anchors the politics. So there is that very umbilical cord kind of relationship that is very difficult to separate. But what I agree with Bwana Senkubuge is, when you put a cost, an economic cost, to a political undertaking, you sometimes become more careful how you go about things. If you look at the dividends we can get from penetrating the Egyptian market,
it's huge.
As Ugandans, it is huge. So when General Muhoozi goes, how beautiful would it be when he goes again that there are two business leaders on his delegation? Yeah. How beautiful
that is
would
important.
be. Yeah.
That's very, very important. I think, gentlemen, we have to move on. and we wait to see what General Mhozi will bring from that side in Egypt, where he is. Viewers, this is the dialogue, and we must progress on to the next topic, which is really pertinent, a big and huge concern to Ugandans, the skyrocketing commodity prices. We have discussed this issue for a very for weeks now, but the most hurting part of it is that government has not come out with a concrete action plan on how to address this matter. And straight away, I will start with you, Ronald. You have been following these events, and you are very aware of what is happening. I want you to paint us a picture of what this means to an ordinary man, an ordinary person. The commodity prices, essential commodity prices have remained high, and government is not yet very clear on how to address the matter.
Yeah, thank you, Apollo. I think it's unprecedented. When you say how the common man is receiving, the common man is now receiving this news in their house. If I go and buy a bar of soap,
the pinch.
The pinch is now real. So whatever plays into this bar of soap which I am playing is no longer something which I can attribute to something very far from me. I have to attribute it to now I am feeling this pain. But I think there are a couple of unique scenarios that we are going through. I think we may be quick to forget the last 2 years, but the last 2 years actually happened. And I spoke to a friend of mine, I think about 4 or 5 months ago, and he was telling me about the container, the cost of the container. And I remember he talked about it like something which you watch on CNN and say it is a problem for a distant land. And I said, containers, what can containers do to us? But if the content of a bar of soap, if 30% or 40% of that content has to be imported from China or imported from India,
raw material,
or if it has to be imported, then the container cost becomes a what? Becomes a problem. It becomes an issue. The same is true with the fuel prices. I think a bit was self-inflicted with the locking of the borders. But the point is that when we look at the integration of our economies, every Ugandan needs to know that whether you are living somewhere in Bukomero, you are part of this global economy in one way or the other. And that's why the managers of the economy need to be very conscious, because these things will come. Any inflation, we will import it. It will come into our country. And when it comes, we need to deal with it. The logistics prices, the fuel prices. And fuel prices are unique. I think one of the privileges we have as a country is that we grow food. And growing food is it's one of the greatest privileges we have currently, that at least the batch of matoke was grown in Uganda. So you could add a cost of transporting it a bit. But imagine if you are importing the batch of matoke from Brazil, it would be a mess. It would really be a mess. But the point is that these prices have actually happened. And then recently, the decision by Russia and to attack Ukraine. And now we have, I don't even feel like we have felt the full effect of that. It hasn't yet seeped in, but it is going to seep in. I was reading today morning that Russia and Ukraine are some of the biggest wheat producers. And when you take a chapati from your lyric stand, if that wheat has come from such a place, and if Russia and Ukraine are not producing, that means wheat in other places is going to be demanded more, because and then will they bring it to Africa, or will they take it to another place? So that's really the reality we are in. But I think what is of importance is for, first of all, an appreciation of, and I speak largely for individual businesses and individuals. I think one of the things which is important is that when things happen in the economic environment, an individual business needs to ask themselves, how do I react? Because the things which are happening are sometimes beyond. And I think that there is a case for the people who look after the economic environment to ask some difficult questions. Questions of, are there some subsidies which can be made to make sure we keep this at bay? And those that have questions, but sometimes even though they are made, they don't trickle down to the bar of soap immediately. They take a bit of time to do that. But the point is that that conversation needs to happen. But a lot of my clientele are the people who are feeling the true effect from their business side, that I used to import items at, and this was my cost, but the cost has gone up 4 times. So how does my business respond? I feel like we need to take this conversation of price increments from the war between Ukraine and Russia to ask how a business is going to respond, how our individual households going to respond. Why it is important is because that is the information which people actually need right now. So if I am in a situation where my household, I earn 1 million shillings per month, and my costs have gone up by 20%, how do I respond to that to that reality? And why that information? Because if there are no answers to that question, it boils. It boils. And you know, our tension explodes in various ways. You know, sometimes you are driving in Kampala and someone insults you and you are shocked where the anger came from. But you don't blame the person. It is something which has been boiling inside and they have to deal with it. The same is true with businesses. There are many, I mean, when you talk about the big manufacturers, they have capacity to transfer cost. If I'm a big oil producer, I can work out in my systems and transfer cost to the final customer. But then there are some businesses in between the big manufacturer and the customer. So when you look at, and I'll give an example of soap making. Every person who says I'm a soap maker and you're not one of the big ones, you are making it in your backyard, you have to buy those inputs. But I can accept a bar of soap from Mukwano going up by a certain price. But if you are my neighbor and you increase the bar of soap by that price, I say, no, you man, you are a thief now. And that means that what happens to that business is that that business has to go out of action. And when that business goes out of action, you have 3 unemployed people who are unemployed in that business. So that for me, especially in the small and medium business space, a number of these small businesses don't have the capacity to withstand even these shocks. And many of them, the alternative, and you remember even during COVID, that was the scenario. There are businesses which could take the shock and they say, I will soldier on for 6 months. But the small businesses, that shock becomes very, very complex to take.
Okay. I will get back to you, Ronald, on how businesses have reacted to this environment. I mean, apart from transferring that cost to the consumer, or how else would they have reacted or responded? I'll get back to you. But Baguma, let's look at the communication from government. And communication also comes with the whole way they have responded to the public. The public has felt the pinch for almost now close to 2 months of these escalating commodity prices. But government, how has government responded? I told you in my introductory statements what the Prime Minister said. If you can't manage, buying soap, then you can use papao leaves. We used it at one point. I don't know if you can look at the whole response of government, and especially with that local person feeling the pinch, because these people who are in government have privileges. Some of them have fuel cards. They may not know even how much a liter is. They are not actually bothered about a bar of soap going up to 10,000. They can afford that. How has been the government's response?
By the way, Apple, I also have used the leaves of purpose to wash. Yeah, there have been 2 wars but not
in my life, but not in your palatial home in Ntinda.
No,
Hey.
they were two. I actually don't have now a home to talk about. It is under construction. So these prices have made me stop. So I have felt them very much. I'm feeling the pain very much. I have an unfinished structure. So now if my children came back to
Yeah,
Ghana,
cement.
where would they sleep? Everything.
The
not
price
just
of cement has-
everything, every material you touch, it has gone up. But the purpose story, you see, in 1979 and in 1985, we were displaced because of those two wars. We were displaced, thrown out of home, you know, and became internally displaced people. And on those two occasions, we used pawpaw leaves to wash clothes. But you see, the circumstances in which we were.
Are not
Thank you.
the ones prevailing today.
Yeah. Thank you. So, but also, I think I don't understand the context in which the Right Honourable Prime Minister spoke, but you could have been with locals and having a conversation and throwing in a joke. But you see, when you are that level of a person, sometimes the jokes can be extremely problematic and cause you a lot of trouble. And we have seen this even when the Prime Minister of UK, actually he has been saved by the Ukrainian war when he had a bit of a cake in his house while the others were in lockdown. That was leading to his impeachment.
Yeah, even the standoff in Parliament, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Deputy Speaker, I think he was making it as a joke that you, Honorable Zake, you were tortured and your legs broken, but you managed to win a medal.
So,
but it's escalated into a serious
because
standoff.
when you're a public figure, everything you talk about, even the things you do, can become they become public fodder. So you can't know how it goes. But you see, that comes in the context of the pain that we are feeling because of the increase in the costs, which is the increase in the cost of living. And that one is against a lowering in our incomes. Many of us had our incomes stop. There has been an attempt. Now, it's not post-COVID. People say post-COVID. It's not yet post-COVID. But when COVID has fundamentally gone down, there have been attempts by people to rebuild themselves painfully with difficulty. Now, the price increases hit even harder when your incomes are much lower. And yes, there has been a general lowering in our incomes. So the pain of the prices, if the price increase becomes even more painful. And you see, it affects our everyday things. I drove to Entebbe the other day, and that's when I realized that the cost of fuel has gone really high. Because usually I have an amount which it will take me and bring me. It refused to bring me back. The Carite was... That's when I stopped. I said, the price has gone so high. So now I paid attention. You know, because usually when we take fuel, you go and say, put for me 50,000. But you don't count the number of liters. We usually buy fuel in amounts.
Basing on the journey, all the journeys
you know,
we
50,000 will take me and bring me back. So that woke me up very much. And then, I think it was soap. I gave the guy, one of the guys at home, to say, go and buy soap. And he said, the money is not enough.
Richard,
I was wondering why, because...
Richard, could your case be the same as actually what happens with our government officials, people in government, the policymakers, that they may not be very aware or awake of what is happening to an ordinary man?
No, you see, the policy process is not fed. You see, the information that feeds into the policy process is not about the individual pocket expenditure of the officer. It's about the trends by, for example, the information that is collected almost on a daily by you, boss. It's about the information that comes in by intelligence. The policy processes are not just because Senkubuke is the councillor, therefore he has gone and the cabinet is aware that, for example, the prices of oil has gone high. And this is what he was saying. Senkubuga was saying this. When a war breaks out in Ukraine and the prices of fuel start going up globally, the rises in commodity prices are global. That is why the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom can find himself
in Saudi.
In Saudi. That's how big the problem is. So for us here, it translates into the piece of soap.
Yeah.
For him, it translates into a flight. Because you see, the Prime Minister of Britain does not like going to beg in Saudi. No. So that's how this big is now. So you can't say that the policy making here, because the people don't buy soap directly, then they don't know. The process cannot be like that. It is seen, it is predictable. You can even, by the way, predict with figures, these ones, that the inflation is going to rise by this, so the prices are going to rise by this. And therefore, what do we do?
Exactly.
How do we intervene? What are the commodities that pain people most? That we need to be making interventions, So if that is not being done, it cannot be that because these people don't pay for soap.
Richard,
It is the problem is more fundamental than that.
For a while, we have discussed this issue of, actually it has been public discourse for more than 2 weeks, of commodity prices, but the communication from government is really, really scanty.
No, just think about the decision making. The decision making doesn't take 1 week or 2 weeks. You know, it will take more weeks to make the decision. First of all, to agree. I believe if you get this guy here, he's a specialist, whatever it is, and you get a second specialist. Senkubuga is here, and another specialist, Ruachivichinga, is here. They will first disagree.
We have to.
On what they should do, on what should happen, what the priority actions will be. 2 weeks will go, each one bringing their arguments and building
so
them.
That the silence
On
the side of government is somehow, to some extent, justifiable.
it is to be expected.
It should be expected.
It is to be expected that the decision making will not be high. However, preparing the population for this would not need to wait. It is predictable, it is foreseeable, and therefore you can say people, the prices will be going high.
Richard, we have very many cases and examples. Even this week, 3 or 4 days ago, in Sudan, people were on streets rioting because of a hike in the cost of bread.
But is that new? The government?
No.
In Sudan, the government was toppled
yes,
because of bread.
That's what I'm saying. Wouldn't that be a point of reference that this government should be looking at and maybe responding, quickening their steps and efforts in responding?
No question about that. No question about that. You see, for me, especially in communication, these are foreseeable, predictable occurrences. You can start preparing the population.
Exactly. Even when the war broke up between Russia and Ukraine, our strategists would have sat, predicted, and came up with probably an action plan.
Yes. So for me, I agree with you.
That from Russia, there is oil. This war may affect oil flow. It may affect wheat and what else? Those are, and other raw products.
Oil affects everything.
Yes,
of course. But for me also, I do not want to sit here and trivialize the complexity of the decisions that have to be made. I also don't want to sit and say, oh, well, in 2 weeks they should come out with a solution. I am not sure that it is as simple as that. I may not know. This is not my area of expertise. But I also think that it is more complex than that. It could be communicated better, but I think it's much more complex to make these decisions. He probably knows.
Ronald, talk about how businesses should have responded. Instead, what we know, they have only passed on the burden to consumers. How else would they have responded?
No, I think that's a very good question. I want to add something to what Mr. Baguma said. I think it's you remember when COVID started, there was a sense that the whole nation was focusing on this thing, and all our minds said, how can we help? So things like put on a mask, social distancing, those were very well thought out messages that were simplified for the common man too. So there was barely a public meeting you would go to and you are not told that put on a mask. And I think even in challenges like this, we need to kind of create such messages which help the common man understand how the season, first of all, we are in, because we didn't know the disease.
Exactly.
And the disease is a complex disease. No one would believe that this disease would take over 1 million Americans. It is an odd disease if it can be able to do that. But even in the complexity of that disease, our health teams and the leadership team managed to simplify the message for us to be able to do that. And I believe that, as Mr. Baguma has said, that this is it's a very complex problem. Some things are in your control, some things are not in your control. And we have good policymakers who know the complexity, and they have to kind of get there. But I feel like one communication bit would be, after they have painted this picture, we need to understand what putting on the mask during this period means. I think there was a case in Israel when they were having water shortages. And the strategy was that every advert on newspaper, or rather on TV, was saying you are going to starve the nation, and everyone understood that when you leave a room, you have to turn off the tap. So that's one of the things which I think on the communication side we need to do. How do we make sure that the message goes out? But I think from the business perspective, usually when we talk to businesses, we say there are two things. There are things external to you and internal to you. Now, in times of crisis, business inefficiencies come to life. So you will find that whenever you see a crisis outside your business, it means it's going to put pressure on you. How you manage your human resource, how you manage your operations. If you are talking about a route plan, for example, of a delivery truck, when fuel has gone up, you might want to ask, can one truck be able to do this same delivery? It might have to start working at 5:30. But now you have two trucks which you are fueling, and they are doing different routes. Those are questions which business owners need to be asking, because there is a point beyond which the consumer can't pay.
Yes.
Above soap can reach a price where the consumer says, you know what, you people,
let me go for Papa Olives.
We have given up on this thing. And the business owner knows that, and you don't want your business to go out of business. So I think the conversations business people need to be asking are, how do we respond? Because your response has to be more immediate. One of the challenges of government policy is government policy takes time to take root. You can make a policy. I mean, for example, we need to ask a question. If in a bar of soap we have been using palm oil, how do we increase our production of palm oil locally so that we don't find ourselves? And if sunflower can be a replacement, how do we incentivize sunflower farmers so that we can be able to not be in this problem? But those are things which are 2, 3, 4, 5 year plans. So at the immediately when you think about at a business level, at the enterprise level, that is the conversation which needs to be happening. Conversations with customers to make sure that customers understand what has happened. I felt like in the media yesterday they told us about what has happened to the bar of soap. But the issue is that why wasn't this told to the Chikubo trader? The Chikubo trader is the one who is supposed to be explaining that we are importing palm oil from Malaysia. It has become expensive. That's why. So that means even in the value chains of these businesses, you need to make sure that information is good. Even the security guard of the company should know, you know what, the box has gone up. These are the reasons. And this could change. If we talk about a tax, the tax which was mentioned.
Imported duty.
Yes, that conversation, I think, that information needs to trickle down. And then also, I think sometimes it's helpful to make a gesture. For example, when the tax is mentioned, you remember during COVID, there was a time when they said, you know what, banks, go slow on these businesses. because they are going through a tough period of time. And such gestures, they may not solve everyone's problem, but they show that you are in it with us. So I think one of the things which would be good to see more from government would be that, to say, we are in it with you. And such gestures, like the tax was mentioned by the entrepreneurs, it may be helpful to say what gesture has been made to show that we are in it with you.
Thank you so much, Ronald. And finally, in your prediction, do you see us getting out of it in a course of weeks or months? What do you see if you look at the prevailing situation, just as we conclude?
Yeah, I think the situation we are in, it's hard to tell when it will end. We didn't know Ukraine and Russia would come immediately after COVID. You would not after COVID, for sure, even during. Yeah, but the point I think is that I think we are going to become more resilient. We have seen, at least from the businesses I meet, the businesses have become more resilient. The Ugandans have become more resilient that run those businesses. So if you're a business owner, even at an individual level, this is an opportunity to build muscles. Because we only build muscles during crisis. So it's going to be tough, it's going to be bumpy, but let the muscles be built.
Richard, your final comment on what you think.
For me, I think that the government machinery, which, to my knowledge, I know a couple of the people there who are very brilliant, need to get the political minds to appreciate the political dividends, and therefore economic, of communicating strategically. I think that misses. I think the political leadership, in terms of the people in the political think that it is standing behind a microphone and speaking. Not that it's not. They don't think about scripting. They don't think about dressing the message and dressing the carrier. I don't think so. It's about the popularity of being behind the camera and being the one. What you put out, they need to understand. But also the social media. To understand the social media and approach it in a strategic manner. A lot of the things can actually be, a lot of the pain and anger can actually be managed by proper and strategic communication. Right. So I think that's critical.
Good. Thank you so much, our viewers. It is time now we close the show. I have to appreciate you viewers for all this time. Thank you so much. We didn't have that opportunity to look at your feedback, your messages on our social media platforms and elsewhere, but I must appreciate you for this time. Thank you so much, Ronald Senkubuge. Thank you so much for being part of this program.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's always a pleasure. And from the production team and everyone here at Soul TV, we say thank you. Good afternoon and a splendid weekend.
Soul Television, Femunyo.